Hey, it's Brian here, and this is the final video in the racism series that I'm doing. So in this video, I'm going to go over some final wrap-up thoughts and also go over a list of 101 ways to reduce the racism in the world. And look, if you want to skip over this intro part where I go over some final points and go right to that list, go down to the timestamp down below and it will take you right to the list. And a few things I want to say to wrap up here is I was very particular in this series to hit the topic of racism from several different angles and alter my communication style depending on who I'm talking to. So for example, one video was I was talking directly to the racists out there. In another video, I was talking directly to people who have experienced racism against them and are trying to overcome it. And then of course, several of my videos, I'm just talking to a general audience just trying to become more open-minded and just attack racism. And I think that's really important because you gotta meet people where they're at. I think that's how you foster real change. And racism is a complex issue also. And honestly, I'm gonna look back on this video series, I believe, 6 months from now, 6 years from now, and be like, I kind of have a different opinion now, right? But I think that is a part of growth. That's the growth mindset that I have, where I know, like 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, I'm going to be smarter, more open-minded than I am today. And even looking back on a couple videos now and some segments from the video, even now I'm like, I could have articulated that one point better. But one thing for certain is, this is my authentic perspective right now. I really try to be as honest as possible in this video series, and I hope that that came across to you watching. And racism is such a deep issue, and I just really encourage you to, if you're passionate about it, just speak up on it. And of course, you gotta understand that to reduce the racism in the world, you gotta start off with yourself first and the circle that you have. So especially if you're a parent, because look, if you raise your children right, they're gonna be open-minded people. I think you have the most control around your direct family, to be honest. And look, even if racism is not your thing, I just want this video series to encourage you to speak up on whatever topic that you're passionate about. You know, I think it's really important to direct your positivity, knowledge, and inspiration to some larger issue at different points in your life and incorporate your greatness into that. You know, because I think if you just stay boxed in, I think you'll miss a critical element to the meaning of life, in my opinion. And also, through this video series, I want to inspire you to not fall into the trap of, oh, I'm white, so I need to let black people take the lead on racism. Or say if you're black, you can't say like, oh, I'm black, but I don't agree with the mainstream narrative on this sort of stuff, so it's better to not say anything. Like, no, you need to understand that you amplifying your voice is not de-amplifying any other voice. That's tied to the idea too of like you striving for your greatness is not diminishing anyone else's greatness. You know, like as you're trying to empower people, do not disempower yourself and restrict your own voice in the process. That's not productive at all. And I want to go into this point a little bit, like the point to center black voices that I've heard. And often I've heard this from people that are proclaiming to fight racism, but then they say statements like this. And honestly, from my experience, the people that say stuff like that are often the most closed-minded and bigoted people towards that race. And the reason is because often they only want to center the black voices that agree with them, that are an echo chamber for what they already think, right? And it's usually only the black voices that are disempowering. The black people that feel like victims is the voices that they want to hear and show you. So it's like they usually frame this person as this spokesperson for black people, but they're really just using this person's pain for their own agenda. And it's just so backwards. Like anytime someone feels powerful or like a victor, whether they're a black person or just someone who has experienced racism against them, these sort of people, they often restrict that voice because they mentally want to disempower that race. So that's something that you gotta be aware of. And this person is often the undercover racist that I mentioned in my part 3 video, or it's just a black person that is a self-righteous narcissist. So you gotta be aware of that. And look, it's just so extremely patronizing, in my opinion, to say statements like center black voices or listen to black people or agree with black people's experiences. And the reason is because it insinuates that every black person thinks the same in regards to racial issues, right? But obviously there's diversity within races. Plus, like you can honor someone's singular experience, but it doesn't mean that you have to agree with them on a larger topic tied to their experience, you know? And it's like, it is impossible to agree with every black person. Why? Because there's 47 million black people in the United States. So if two black people have a conflicting viewpoint on XYZ race issue, which they definitely do, then very literally you have to agree with one and disagree with another, if not disagree with both. So someone telling you, oh, agree with this black person, doesn't make any sense because they're just showing you one, obviously. And if you oppose that, then you're being bigoted and closed-minded to black people, straight up. So that's why it's really important to be your authentic self in regards to talking about these racial issues, right? Share your authentic thoughts, because someone out there, no matter what you say, is gonna agree with you and disagree with you. And you gotta be okay with that. And honestly, your perspective on what the majority think about racial issues is distorted anyway due to mainstream media and social media, who often highlight viewpoints that are very extreme and viewpoints that have an agenda. So for example, like I mentioned in previous videos, most of the leaders of the anti-racist movement, if you actually sit down and hear them speak, they sound delusional. They sound like they're in a cult. They have very faulty and simple-minded thinking, in my opinion. And I'm directly talking about people like Robin DiAngelo, who wrote the book White Fragility, or Ibram Kendi, who wrote the book How to Be an Anti-Racist. Like, these people have been on TV since May, but they're very misguided, in my opinion. Even Patrice, so she's the Black Lives Matter founder, and her videos are actually highlighted by YouTube on the front page at times too. She's a little off. You gotta listen to her speak. So she either makes generic rhetoric that is cliche and everyone agrees with, or she doesn't make any sense whatsoever, in my opinion. And look, most people see through this. I mean, her TED Talk, which is on YouTube, has a like to dislike ratio of 4,000 to 15,000. So like, you won't find people like this that share these viewpoints in real life. It's very extreme. But then watching TV, you wouldn't think that, right? They frame these people as, these people are fighting racism. They have positive intentions, but a lot of times they don't, and you have to see through it. And you might be wondering, like, Brian, how can you talk about the Black Lives Matter founder? Like, of course she's trying to empower black people. Oh, really? Because look, for her in particular, she had 10 actual Black Lives Matter chapters leaders sign a letter in the past month airing grievances with her and calling her out pretty much for being too power hungry, for doing her own thing and being corrupt with BLM money. So this stuff is actually going on, and you have to see through it. You have to see through the BS. So you really have to speak up, because you might think your opinion is the minority, but it's probably not if you're doing the research and you're understanding all the perspectives out there. And look, even if your opinion is the minority, and maybe it's misguided, in my opinion, still speak up. You know, I think let's have a dialogue. Even if I agree with you or disagree with you, I want you to speak up. I want you to know where I stand, and I want to know where you stand. I'm not trying to restrict any voice out there. And it's like, whatever avenue that I find myself in, I'm never going to take a step back, right? That's something that I'm committed to. I'm never going to diminish my own greatness for someone else's. It doesn't work like that. Like, you might try something like that on someone else. That's not going to work on me, because I'm trying to impact the world in a unique way. And I'm going to speak up about things that I care about, right? You do not get to amplify voices by silencing other voices. That might work for cowards, but that's not going to work for me. So I'm going to share what's in my mind, because racism and race-related topics, in my opinion, are about to tear this world apart, just like it has done in the past, if we are not extremely specific about the steps moving forward. And we gotta be self-critical and self-reflective about those steps also. And look, if you got a rebuttal about some things I'm talking about in this series, why not do a 10-part video series on racism yourself? Right? That's so much better than doing a 2-sentence post on Instagram or Facebook with your self-righteous self, in my opinion. Think about that. And look, as I said in this whole video series, to wrap up, there are so many misguided ideas around racism. So especially if you're a parent out there teaching your children about it, don't listen to a lot of the voices. Because like, I want to mention some really briefly that I think sums up what is wrong with a lot of the dialogue right now. So a lot of the dialogue is seeing things in a racial lens. It is assuming and generalizing things based off singular instances. So the reason this is bad is because the same person who sees 5 black people die and then groups black people all as victims is the same mentality of a person who sees 5 black people rob a store and then group the whole race as criminals. It's the same exact mentality. They are being taught to interpret the individual as the group. Over time, that's going to lead to racism, period. So I really hope that we wrap our head around more productive dialogue, in my opinion. It's like a big point of this video series is I am just sick of the mental enslavement of black people in the United States. The media's nonsense is trying to brainwash my son into believing he is a victim and there's some imaginary handicap on him before he's even 2 years old. And they're trying to do that to every black child in America under the disguise of fighting racism. They only highlight black people's fear, hurt, and victimhood and then encourage other people to feel that same way. They don't highlight actual solutions to racism. They don't highlight empowering mindsets to overcome it. They don't do any of that, right? So I really hope this whole video series really puts things in regards to racism in a more positive and accurate light. That's the goal that I was trying to accomplish. So now I'm going to go into 101 ways to reduce racism in the world. And no, I'm not going to elaborate on it at all right now, because look, for all of these points, I mentioned it across my video series, but feel free to comment down below if you have a specific question in regards to something and I'll answer it. And look, some might not be super clear, honestly, like how this ties to reducing racism, so it might be kind of an indirect route. And I'm aware that some of these things are way easier said than accomplished, so keep that in mind too. I'm aware of that. So let's get into it. So the first groupings here are mainly for the individual, how they can reduce racism in the world. So number 1, accurately define and point out racism. 2, understand that racism is a spectrum. 3, recognize that racism looks different depending on geographical location. 4, condemn all racism fabrications that make light of actual racism. 5, don't make a joke out of racism. 6, detest all racial generalizations. 7, respect the individual identity of every person. 8, don't assume people's experiences from their race. 9, reflect on your biases and where they come from. 10, recognize that every positive bias has a correlated negative bias. 11, reflect on where your kindness comes from. 12, think as a free spirit and not in a group or tribal way. 13, be colorblind on an individual level. 14, don't be blind to race-related issues. 15, don't mention someone's race if it's insignificant to a story. 16, resist group guilt and or group victimhood. 17, never look down on yourself from negative ancestry history. 18, don't give in to mainstream media's division tactics. 19, halt regressive segregation strategies. 20, use the word sell out wisely. 21, respect who people are attracted to. 22, articulate your pride better. 23, differentiate race from culture and or family history. 24, get out of your echo chamber and diversify the voices you hear. 25, commit to the idea that dialogue, listening, and understanding ideally is a two-way street. 26, seek truth, not to be right. 27, don't let an ideology own you. 28, don't let your emotions cloud your judgment and critical thinking skills. 29, don't just focus on reducing racism, but also increasing open-mindedness. 30, see through the empty rhetoric out there. 31, notice the race hustlers, sinister people, and fakes who act like they want to reduce racism. 32, condemn the critical race theory lens. 33, avoid self-righteousness. 34, don't assume another person's intentions. 35, don't be the misguided spirit bred from someone else's heart. 36, recognize the potential for good in everyone. 37, engage with racists when the opportunity presents itself. 38, understand the racist and ignite his or her self-reflection for change. 39, articulate your thoughts better internally. 40, articulate your thoughts better externally. 41, understand the psychology of changing mindsets. 42, recognize our differences human to human, not necessarily race to race. 43, learn from history. 44, for some matters, do not be fearful to say I do not know or I do not know enough to have an informed opinion. 45, don't immediately take a side based off identity and not ideas. 46. Differentiate validation from encouragement. 47. Use statistics wisely and accurately. 48. Understand that correlation does not equal causation. 49. Stop the shame as it discourages authentic and productive dialogue. 50. Create spaces where there is no suppression of self-expression. 51. Don't tiptoe over your words. 52. Don't be patronizing and condescending to a race. 53. Freeing diversity beyond skin color and outside factors. 54. Recognize diversity within races. 55. Call out artists and people that glorify negative stereotypes. 56. Promote more positive music, entertainment, and influencers. 57. Don't claim racial supremacy or privilege. 58. Know when to lose the battle to win the war. 59. Label behaviors, not people. 60. Get acting race out of your vocabulary. 61. Prioritize limiting racist actions over limiting racist words. 62. Be less concerned with semantics and more concerned with solutions. Number 63. Act like Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter. So the next grouping here is mainly targeting systemic racism. So it may be you personally doing this step, or it can just be you encouraging these steps out there in society. So with that in mind, number 64, don't rush into doing something that is counterproductive. 65, don't advocate for quotas just to mask your laziness to uncover root factors. 66, don't use systemic racism to fight systemic racism. 67, advocate for government systems that support organized collaboration between cities and successful programs tied to areas such as parenting, child development, education, employment, etc. 68, drastically reform workplace diversity trainings. 69, incentivize healthier food options in local communities. 70, analyze inequity accurately. 71, focus more on uplifting communities over achieving equity. 72, understand that equity of every factor across every sector of society is not just impossible, but also immoral and a form of slavery. So the next grouping is specifically in regards to the education system. So number 73, hire the best teachers possible, regardless of group identity in any form. 74, diversify school curriculum. 75, highlight positive figures across races. 76, teach finance-related character development and life skills topics in schools. 77, improve systems for parental and teacher collaboration. 78, provide top-notch technological resources to all schools. 79, provide equitable access to advanced coursework. 80, require more training or requirements for teachers and childcare workers while raising pay. 81, reform the college education system. The next grouping is tied to the criminal justice system. Number 82, improve the framework and guidelines for sentencing lengths. 83, learn from the top police districts what is going well. 84, increase the police and local community collaboration. 85, improve training and requirements for all workers in the prison and police systems and seek a higher level of mental health and psychology expertise. 86, incorporate positive psychology support and or workshops in prison. These next few points are tied to family. Number 87, be the best parent you can possibly be. 88, reform child support system to de-emphasize money and emphasize elements of social and cognitive development for a child. 89, promote parenting and childhood development organizations locally. 90, develop more mentorship programs in communities of need. 91, never tell a person they are disadvantaged, handicapped, oppressed, and or a victim simply because of their skin color. 92, Emphasize ideas related to individually overcoming racism and highlight more positive mindsets. 93. Don't turn a blind eye to disproportionate death rates of a particular race in specific areas. 94. Question politicians that talk the talk but don't create positive change. 95. Limit political corruption. 96. Accept that racism will never be 100% eliminated. Just like how murderers, mean people, etc. will always exist somewhere. 97. Love yourself, know yourself, and prioritize your own self-development. 98. Dominate your psychology. 99. Be mindful of potential influence you have on people. 100. Recognize that amplifying your voice does not de-amplify anyone else's, just like your greatness does not reduce others' potential for greatness. And number 101, speak up about what's right and don't be ignorant and or a coward. Reduce racism. Share the messages in this series and share the video.